Oh,
And team, we're all
mute
set.
yourselves when he's presenting. Got it?
Um,
Okay, so we are live. I'm so excited about this webinar today. Since I started the series a couple months ago, we covered a lot of different topics, a lot of different aspects of PPC. Finally, we're getting to one that we haven't touched on yet, and I think it's a bit overdue, which is display advertising on the Google Display Network. The Google Display Network is an incredibly powerful tool. It is one that is extremely complicated. I think everyone would agree that it's probably one of the most difficult channels of PPC to run. But, and this is a big but, once you are able to figure it out, once you crack it, the results can be incredible because no other channel of PPC gives you the reach of display advertising. So I have joining with me today, Aaron Levy, Sarah Ulrich, and also Michelle Morgan. We're gonna, chit-chat for a little bit, get to know each other, and probably go live in a few minutes. So, welcome everyone. I'm very happy to have you. Before we begin, actually, let's do a quick rundown and see where everybody's from. By the way, Aaron, I'm not seeing you. Could you stop sharing your screen, please? Not yet,
I'm
Aaron.
working on it.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. So awesome.
There we go.
Much better. There we go. Because you have to see who's presenting. People need to put a name to the face. So where are you coming from, Aaron?
I'm coming from Philadelphia, so we have the Philly fanatic behind me, who's the Phillies mascot.
And in the Philly bricks.
Exactly, and our Philly exposed brick because we were too lazy to drywall anything.
No, but it's nice. You have that nice rustic look.
Exactly.
I have the Israeli Venetian blinds.
Some of my favorite
Coming from
Venetian
Tel Aviv.
blinds.
Yes, the best Venetians are Israeli. Okay. And we also have Michelle and Sarah. Where are you guys from?
I am in Atlanta, sitting in the Atlanta office.
Okay.
Yep, and I'm in Indianapolis.
Okay, great. And so I guess I'm the only one that isn't stateside. Although I do have to admit, in case you haven't figured out, I'm originally from the States, Southeast as well. I'm from Florida, but I've been living here in Tel Aviv, Israel for the past 10 years or so. And wow, we've got quite a number of people joining already. I see we have Felipe from Chile. Those of you watching, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. It's great to know where you guys are coming from. And one other thing I'd like to add, it is great to get feedback from you watching in the audience. While Aaron is presenting, I will be monitoring the chat. I'll be addressing questions. We will have a presentation, but after the presentation, we'll have time for some question and answers. All of us are going to discuss everything that we're learning here today, including feedback and concerns and questions from the audience. So please don't be shy, don't be silent. Keep whatever's on your mind, send it over. We'll try to address everything we can. Great. So I guess it's about time we start. So Aaron, whenever you're ready, just go ahead and go back to sharing your screen and we could start the presentation. It should be about 20-30 minutes long. And afterwards, we'll get to our question and answer and panel session.
Perfect. So Joel, do you want to read our lovely little bios here?
Oh, yes. Oh, man, I skipped the most important part.
I was going to say, we can all introduce ourselves, but...
No. It's better if I introduce you. I really must apologize. It's been about a month and a half since I hosted one of these shows. Okay, by the way, so Aaron, we got his name down. He's a director at PPC over at a company called Tinuiti. How do you say that, by the way?
Tinuiti. We're still getting used to it, too. As you can see from behind me, we got the Elite SEM... there we go. Elite SEM logo. We haven't finished rebranding yet. But
well, I mean, actually, the name sounds good. Like it rolls off the tongue well. It's just really hard to read. It's a great name. I mean, don't get me wrong. But yeah, okay. So you're a director of PPC at Tinuiti, which is formerly known as Elite SEM. Aaron oversees an SEM team up and down the East Coast. His role over there is to make sure that every team has everything they need in order to succeed and also manage large-scale trends to future-proof strategies. Now, besides his role at Tinuiti, he teaches display advertising at the University of Vermont and Drexel. He's an internationally recognized speaker and author of a 7-time member of PPC Heroes' most influential list. Thank you very much, Aaron. I'm very happy to be hosting you today, and I'm really looking forward to this presentation. We also have Sarah joining us, who is a proud University of Florida graduate, a Florida Gator, and has been working in digital ever since her career started. And she's still and always has been based in SEM, but she's built out a niche at Tinuiti with the subject or the area of Google Display, YouTube, and Gmail campaigns, which, by the way, have a lot in common. We're here talking about the GDN, but a lot of what you do and a lot of it you need to know in order to advertise on YouTube and also Gmail comes from the Google Display Network. They're very similar in the way they're built and managed. She leads enterprise-level relationships and runs strategy on retail, lead generation, and subscription-based accounts. So thank you, Sarah. And last but not least, we have Michelle. She is the Director of Client Services at Clicks Marketing. Michelle has honed her PPC skills over the last 7 years in both in-house and agency roles, managing accounts in many different industries, verticals, and markets. Her passions are around audience targeting, cross-channel dynamics between search and social. Michelle's a regular industry speaking at events like PubCon, SMX, Hero Conference, and others. In 2018, Michelle won SEM Speaker of the Year at Search Engine Land Awards and was also voted another top 25 PPC influencer in 2019, which is really terrific. I made the top 50, by the way, but it's nice to see, it's nice to be doing these webinars and meeting so many of the other people who are, really influential and well known. So with no more of a delay, I think we're ready to start. Aaron, I think we're now ready for you to go ahead and take control and share your screen.
We are off, and my screen should be shared already. Can we confirm that? I'm assuming it is. Okay. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different route. I'm going to start with kind of an introduction to display as a medium. Part of what you're going to be, the challenge that you're going to have is the way that the Google Display Network, or Google Display Ads as they call it now, and Google likes to rebrand things just like we do, is it's built for paid search people, but that's not the way that display is designed, sold, bid, bought. So we're going to give a little bit of an introduction to display as a whole. You've already met us, obviously, but I'm going to talk about how display fits into the proverbial marketing funnel. We're going to talk about why clicks aren't maybe the best way to measure success in display, and how you weight views. We're going to talk about some of the old ad units that have been around forever that we're all familiar with, and then Sarah's going to walk us through some of the new ones. The nice thing about her role here is that she's gotten to alpha or pre-alpha a lot of the things that we're working on, which is one of the benefits of working with big budgets, is you get to be a guinea pig. So Sarah's going to walk us through some of the things that she's learned toying with things like discovery ads, smart campaigns, and then we're going to go through a little bit of brand security if that's something you care about. And if we have time, we'll run through some real world case studies. Otherwise, we'll just hang out here. So thank you all for joining, and please do ask questions. We have some time built in, so should be fun. A little bit about Tinuiti. We actually already have a question about someone understanding what Tinuiti is. So we used to be Elite SEM, and we started buying friends. So we acquired a handful of agencies, and rather than favoring everything towards Elite and calling ourselves Elite Digital or something like that, we chose to merge continuity, acuity, ingenuity, a bunch of other UITs, and that's where the name came from. So it's sort of the old 1 + 1 = 3. We believe that the sum is greater than our parts. So even though we were born from SEM, we're now full service digital media, including a lot of display, both on search and programmatically. So when you're thinking about display, we'll start with the old marketing funnel, something recognizable that everybody loves. The traditional marketing funnel is, even calling it a funnel is a little bit of a misnomer. It should be more of a cycle than a funnel, but that's besides the point. You start with awareness, your top of funnel, your prospecting. You'll go down to what we'll call interest. That is, people have an idea what they want, but aren't quite sure yet. Down to consideration, down through conversion, and eventually you have your nice long-term customer that you've paid plenty of money to acquire. Where's my little next button? There we go. So when you think about awareness, it's the audience doesn't really know anything. They're just starting their journey. They have no idea. They might have a rough idea of what they want, but they don't really know how to find it. They don't know what they're looking for. They don't know anything. So these are people who are completely new to your company. You move into the interest phase, That's a customer who has a little bit of a better idea of what they want, but they have no idea where to get it. They don't have an affinity to a brand. They might be familiar with you, they might not, but odds are very loosely, maybe by name only. Get that into consideration, and the audience has a good idea of what they want. They're not sure where to get it. They're weighing their options out. They've done their research, but they're not sure what they're going to pick. Then finally, someone buys something. Then we're very happy, and then they are your customer. But the reason why I say it's a cycle rather than the funnel is that in a perfect world, that customer will keep on going and will become your customer for life. And they'll keep on buying, they'll keep on renewing. The big challenge with display, and the reason why this is such a fun thing for me to teach as a career SEMer, or to point around to other folks, is most of what we do only touches the top and the bottom. The way that we look at display is it is either prospecting or it is remarketing, and that is pretty much the only way we look at it. So we kind of ignore the whole middle of the funnel, and we know that the customer journey is complicated and it's never just see something and then buy it. But that, to a degree, is the way that we treat it. So hopefully, what we're going to get you out of is some of those old habits and explore some different ways to do it and some different levers. A few other misconceptions that we want to tackle is I talked about this a little bit before, but talking about things on only a click basis, that is only evaluating what you can see in Google Analytics. It's tangible, we love it, we're used to it, we love seeing all of our conversions in one place. It's beautiful, but just because it doesn't show up in there doesn't mean it didn't have an effect or didn't help. So the battle of figuring out how to measure views is really important. So there's a fun fact. I came across this blog post a while ago that ran a bunch of numbers on the importance of view-based. Most of the audience, I'm sure, has never consciously clicked on a banner ad, and they're like, "Oh, what's the point? If the people don't click on the ads, they don't work." You're statistically more likely to survive a plane crash than you are to ever click on a display ad. You're more likely to get a full house at random if you're playing poker. I think you're more likely to have two different colored eyes than you are to click on a display ad. Long story short, nobody clicks on these things. That doesn't mean they don't work. It just means that action has to be recorded in a different way. The other thing that we usually do is that we'll look at, as search folks, we're used to, we get conversion, we like conversion. Everything must tie to conversion. Don't get me wrong, we want to make sure that this stuff works and that you get money out of it, but you can't look at these things in the same lens. I think a lot of what Sarah's built her expertise in, I'm curious to hear her thoughts and Michelle's, is sometimes you have to evaluate these things in a different lens. Not everything is meant to convert immediately or is meant to have an immediate direct response on your bottom line. Sometimes it's just sort of shove someone along or push them down the funnel a little bit. The last thing that's a little bit of a challenge, and we're not going to go in depth into this too much, but those of you that are doing, things programmatic, or you're going with a third-party buyer, or you're using, the ad roll, the Criteo of the world, is we put too much trust in them. In the same way that we might look at Facebook and Google together. If someone sees an ad on Facebook and clicks the ad on Google, both of them are going to say, "We made that sale," and you only sold one item, so only one of them gets credit. Display works the same way, but a lot of people forget about it, and that's something that we're going to have to, that's a different conversation. That's a webinar all on its own, but something to consider. You have to make sure that you use your own source of truth. Just make sure that you're very carefully defined. Now remember, when we're going through display, and frankly, I mean, this applies to everything, but it's a little bit easier and a little bit more tangible when you think about things from a search perspective. If someone is searching for something, they want it. Great. You give them an ad, it's the right person. On display, we're guessing. If you're going based on placement alone, or you're going based on a person alone, you might reach them at the right time. You might reach them at the wrong time. You might serve them the wrong ad. You might serve them the right ad. To make this a little bit more tangible, I'm going to talk about my favorite person in the world, Michelle. No, it's me. I'm just kidding. So I'm going to share probably a little bit too much information about myself. I have painted out my own map of me. So all of these are different elements of what you could see. I'm in the proverbial 26 to 35-year-old age bracket. I'm not going to say which end. Just know that I heard every morning when I wake up, so it's the higher end. I'm a guy, in case you didn't figure out. I have a bachelor's degree from a private college here in Philadelphia. Go Wildcats, Villanova. I do pretty well, thank you, Tenuity. They take good care of me. So I'm in an income bracket that would probably be desirable. I bought my house about 2 years ago. It needs a little bit of work. I own a car from 2011. I drive zero. I have no clue where my car is right now. At some point, I might have to find it. I play hockey and I go bowling once a week. I golf twice a week. I live in Philly, but I'm on the road at least 1 week a month. So I'm all over the place. Sometimes for work, sometimes for play. Good luck figuring it out. I have a quote unquote small business. It's just a single person company. If I do like random consulting engagements, I put them through there. But I technically own a business. My purchase habits, I would call myself a minimalist, and I like to say that I'm value driven. That does not mean that I'm cheap. It means if I buy something, I want to buy something good that will last, and I want to buy one of it. It's interesting. So when you think about these, the items on the top are what I would call attributes. These are what I am. These are things that I have. These are tangible things that cannot be disputed. The things in the middle, to a degree, they're what I am. They're also what I do. They're things that can be pretty easily figured out by display networks. And the things on the bottom are what I feel, how I think, how I operate. These are the things that are a little bit harder to figure out. But a lot of display networks, Google included, are trying to figure it out. So when you start to think about display, especially on the Google Display Network, you can put it into two categories. All of the major targeting formats are either based on people or places. So all of those things that I just mentioned all fit into one of the audience-based buckets. And then you have to use those to serve me a message when it's in the right context, in the right place on the web, making sure that it's either a topic that I care about or it's on a website that I visit frequently that you know that I'll be in the right mindset. Or you use keywords to build out a theme. You have to make sure that these two mesh so that you get the right message to the right person at the right time. Now, this this next couple of slides sort of outline how you can use the individual types of audiences. I'm not going to go through these at length. You should be able to read the descriptors or frankly go through them on your own. But these are different formats that you can target within the Google Display Ads, within the GDN. I'm going to have to get used to their rebranding, just like I'm still getting used to Tenuity. When you think about someone who's in market, that's Google predicting that since I only buy one of everything, it probably means that Aaron's in the market for a new shirt. I have more shirts than one, but they're all loosely the same. But so someone who's in market for something is in mind for making a major purchase. Affinity targeting is going to the things that I like. That's targeting people who are interested in bowling, targeting people who are interested in golf, whatever it may be. Parental status, pretty obvious. Do you have a kid or not? But funny enough, this is one that Google gets wrong pretty often because people don't generally remember to update their profile, and a lot of behavior that looks like moving or nesting can also be confused with trying to have a kid. It's weird, confusing, bland, but for a long time, Google thought I was in my mid-40s and a woman, which, again, different webinar. Age and gender, a little bit more obvious. These tend to be right because once you do set them up, Google can figure out if you were 35 years ago, you're 35 now. They get it. Remarketing similar audiences, these are the things that us searchy types tend to love the most because it's the most tangible to us. Because retargeting ads tend to get conversion, in our mind, they work. Again, another webinar, but we can talk about incrementality. Usually remarketing tends to not be very, very incremental. It's just taking credit for things that might have happened on their own. You can take these things and put them into individual buckets, though. So you think about me, interests are, again, the things in the middle, my golf, my inability to find my own car. Things like that, those are interests. Then you can take attributes, that is what I am, or you can take actions, which is what I do. So as you're starting to think about this and starting to think about how you can build out your own campaigns, put your audience into these buckets and figure out what mix of them you would want to reach, and you'll have a lot more success than going in alone. And This is actually a slide that is repurposed from a Google Display playbook. So sorry, don't get mad at me. I stole your idea. But when you're thinking about these items in a vacuum, the higher up in the marketing funnel, if you will, the broader the reach is. So when you're thinking about demographics, affinity targeting, that sort of stuff is really close to the top of funnel. That's really in the awareness stage. Whereas when you get down to remarketing, CRM, that's really close to them becoming a customer. So it's a little bit of a different way that you can look at how these may fit into the funnel. But don't forget about things like in-market or similar audiences or custom intent. Those are that sort of middle funnel area where people are aware of you but aren't ready to buy yet. That's that part that gets untouched for so long. So those are super, super valuable in a super good way, especially if you have a long purchase funnel, to make sure that you shepherd people along. Fun fact: the in-market audiences were originally built for the automotive industry because that has a very predictable long-term purchase path. So then they have a pretty good idea if someone's about to buy a car or wants to buy a car at some point. So approach it with that mindset. Now, with all that in mind, here's a number of ads that I had gotten served over the past couple of days. I was telling the team I've done this thing where I only log into personal things on Chrome and I only log into work things on Gmail. So I'm trying to keep the two of me separate, and I was a little bit curious just to see what my ads would look like and what audience buckets I fill in. So this was all from Firefox. So these are the ads that professional Aaron gets. I got a couple of things about running a small business, which again, like technically I do, but there's one about me becoming a founder of a retirement home, which I don't really know how old they think I am, but that's a little sad. The top one was interesting, and as was the bottom one. The top one is a POS system or a point of sale system for restaurants, and it was because I was reading a site about food or restaurant startup. So that's a good example of going based on context only and ignoring the person. So this is an article that's about food. So great, they must run restaurants. They need to see a point of sale system. And I'm like, but I don't own a restaurant yet, someday. But that's a good example of why you need to mix these things together. So now that we have a really brief overview, let's talk about tracking and to a lesser extent bidding and why you want to get away from being clicky. Get it? Clicky? It's like Mean Girls? No? Nothing? Okay. Well, you can't laugh because it's a webinar. But I certainly hope you are laughing. Oh, come on, computer, freeze on the I'm very funny slide. Okay. So just like, in life, being clicky can be a little bit dangerous. So this is a stat from a site called Banner Blindness. So take it with a grain of salt, but some people are just really clicky. Of the people that click on display ads, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the Pareto principle, but 20% of the effort is responsible for 80% of the results. It's even more dramatic for click distribution. So something like 10% of people are responsible for 90% of the clicks. They tend to skew older. Yes, it's usually your parents. And of those people, less than a third of them, or more than a third of them, only click 5 ads a month, and 50% of people will never click a display ad. So if you're optimizing to clicks alone, you are essentially optimizing towards 10% of the population, which is not enough people for success and scale. And when you think about these ads and you look at the ones that I was served, the three in the middle are all from Google's responsive ad builder. All of them are very click focused because that is what Google wants to condition us towards, because that's how Google works the best. So I'm not going to say that one way is right or wrong, but it's really just an interesting thing to think of, where you think of displays usually sold on a CPM basis, and we're buying it on a cost per click basis, and Google is skewing it towards clicks. Take that for what it's worth, but it's something to think of when you're going through the responsive display ads. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth into bidding because most people will talk about, we'll buy it on CPC through the Google Display Network, and that's generally fine. I did want to touch on Google's pay per conversion. I guess it's a beta, it's public now, but it's one of those things that sounds so perfect on paper. Like, I only pay Google when things convert. That sounds amazing for me. but Google's not going to run that when they lose. So what we usually find when we're running that is it actually winds up being less efficient than it would be if we were running smart bidding on its own and optimizing on our own. It's one of those things where Google has offered it as a way for people to break into display because they feel a little bit more comfortable. But in terms of scale, it just doesn't work. It optimizes itself off more often than not. It's something that's worth testing, but have it as part of a strategy, not the whole strategy. And I'm not going to go too in depth into this, but since we're in a mobile world, it's the 75th consecutive year of mobile this year. When you're thinking about how you would weight views, mobile, especially tablets, most of the conversions tend to be view based because it's really hard to click on links or little banners or things like that. So when you're thinking about how to optimize, you'll have to look into into views a lot more for mobile. So I'm sure a lot of you are like, okay, well, like, do I count every view? Like, if nobody touches an ad, like, can I count it? Do I trust everything that counts? The answer is no. Again, we're not going to go too in depth into this, but generally speaking, when you're thinking about view throughs, you'll have to do some sort of a weighting element. That is, there's a percentage of them that you can count versus what would have happened anyway. This is a grossly oversimplified weighting chart, but generally speaking, when we do analyses, it's a pretty safe way to think of it. Usually, if you're doing really top of funnel or mid funnel stuff, you can count somewhere between 30 and 50% of view throughs. If you're doing retargeting, it drops to somewhere from like 5 to 15%. So take this with a grain of salt. One of the more frustrating things about Google is you can't, at least right now, Sarah, yell at me if I'm wrong, but you can't bid on views and you can't discount them in the UI unless you make like a really weird custom column. But even then, you can't do too much with it. Someday, maybe Google's heard the feedback and you can do it in some of their larger scale products like DV360. But you'll have to figure out what to do with it down the line. But this is the way that we'll generally report on it. And I do see some good questions coming in already, and we will get to those shortly, I promise. But for now, Sarah's going to talk through some of the bare bones basics and some of the things that she's done with some ad units. And Sarah, just like wink at me when you want me to move the slides.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron. So looking at the responsive display ads, these resize to fit any format, and they claim that they will serve in the format that the user has previously converted on. So whether it's text, image, and native, they're taking that into consideration along with where will this ad look best? How does it fit on the page? So with those two things in mind, these responsive ads are pretty powerful in that they can serve a user and meet them, halfway with what they're looking to see, theoretically, according to the algorithm. These have come a long way. When they first released them, I think everyone was running static ads and really afraid of this kind of dynamic form of serving. But I typically advise against static ads now unless you have the best creative team in the industry and they are unbeatable, just because these responsive display ads have so much more automation behind them that is proven to work and to increase click-through rates. This is ad units of old, but these have come a long way in the sense that they're now called responsive display ads, and we can rotate in multiple assets, which will then be optimized to serve in the best format. So it incorporates a little bit of ad testing nowadays, which is nice too. Were you going to say something, Aaron?
Excited. I promised when I was promoting this to my friends that I was going to rip on Michelle, so I'm going to rip on Michelle now.
Okay.
Michelle's not responding; she's just frowning.
I'm just going to deal with it. I'm used to it. So go ahead. I've got a thick skin. I can handle it.
It's not even very nice, except for the headline that Michelle is a butt.
True.
But no, I mean, one thing to remember, and Sarah, I'm very curious on the more tactical side of this, but just like responsive search ads, you have to make sure that every element will fit either by itself or when together. So this is an example where the headline that I put in was Aaron is the best marketer, and the other headline I put in was Tenuity's the best agency. And then I have a description line that talks about how great I am at marketing. Description line talks about how great Tenuity is in an agency. And when you mix those with Michelle as a butt as a headline and an image that doesn't quite fit, it gets gross. Sarah, from a tactical perspective, how do you make sure that those align?
So I think the biggest thing is making sure your long headline is nothing like your headline or your descriptions. And obviously each of them should be different from the other. So I know in search, we're typically rewording the same thing over and over again, trying to make the best of, set language. I think responsive display ads are obviously the best practice for running, but you have to make sure that you or your client has a ton of assets and that they're okay promoting a few offers within one set. So we wouldn't necessarily create 5 responsive display ads with one focused on free shipping. We would want that ad to encompass everything that we have to offer in one. And then you kind of do have to be a little granular about it, going line by line and making sure that they don't serve alongside one another. But I will say, as long as you keep a close eye on your long headline, as long as it doesn't echo your regular headline or your description, you're in a better place for the auto serving. Gmail ads, my favorite. So these have evolved a lot over the years. They used to be in a pretty strict template where you could just open to a static image. Now you can kind of put in your image, maybe even a carousel catalog. You can do dynamic. There's lots of options for what it looks like when the user opens your email. And now you can also customize your teaser headlines. So when you see it in your inbox, it might say something different than when you open it and it's in full screen. Ad units anew. Cool. So Google Gallery ads showcasing, they're constantly releasing ways to upload more assets within one ad set, right? And when we do this, we can optimize accordingly using the Google algorithm to serve, like I said, what best fits the specific user and their experience in their browser, how likely they are to convert or convert later on. So a lot of these new ads, specifically the gallery ads, are allowing up to 10 ad cards where you can have multiple images and multiple pieces of language set in different cards, and the user can just scroll through them or swipe through them no matter what the platform is. And I think this might see an immediate decline in CTR, but an increase in conversion rate because you're able to better inform those users and kind of eliminate the wasted spend if you're looking at things from a click perspective. And if you're looking at it from a view perspective, maybe they're making their decision a little bit more quickly because they're presented with more information. Discovery ads. So these are still, I would say, pretty new. I don't think it's quite as business as usual to run these amongst your other Google remarketing or Google prospecting campaigns, but they're not responsive ads, even though they take all of the same assets. So basically, if you're running a responsive display ad, RDA, you can take that and repurpose it into a discovery ad from an asset perspective. However, it's going to serve a little bit differently. So you can serve on YouTube inventory on the homepage within Gmail, or then on the Google feed, which is catered to people's, searches and interests because it's on their browser on their phone. So I think to run these, you should probably have run the other stuff too, but they're just an interesting way for Google specific territory now to serve in like a native format. And it does tend to really not look like an ad when you're scrolling through your Google feed. If you have 5 news articles about, higher education, and then you see an ad for higher education, it blends in pretty seamlessly.
Well, thank you much, Sarah. We have a couple of slides that I'm honestly just I'm gonna go through pretty quick because I think you all know how to take care of your own brand, but just a couple of tips and a couple of links from my friends that we can share afterwards as well. The link should be pretty self-explanatory, but obviously one of the biggest challenges with display and the Google Display Network is, in theory, anyone can be on there. So that means that there's a lot of good, there's a lot of not so good. So a lot of what we would like to do is get rid of some of this junk before that it appears. Now, it obviously depends on how sensitive your brand is, but Google gives you plenty of exclusions of categories to exclude ahead of time. Depending on your brand, it may be better just to exclude any and all political stuff. Yes, you may be constricting some of your volume, but it can save you a lot of heartache if you're put next to a story that you don't want to be a part of. I think this was written by my dear friend Jenny Marvin, but when we were in the political spectrum, we all know that it's a contentious place in the world today. Jenny wrote a post on Search Engine Land around the time of the last major election here in the States. This is a link to her post on Search Engine Land that gives you a bunch of news sources to exclude that are, I'll call them polarizing, either really far left or really far right. Again, not saying they're right or wrong, but if your brand doesn't want to be involved in those discussions, it's better just to get out of there. Just stay out of it so that you don't have to comment on it. Whereas in this case, this particular brand got a lot of barking from some of its clients where it's, how are you on this place? And it's like, well, it's remarketing. Why are you on there? But that's a different conversation. Again, sometimes it's better just to stay out of the dialogue so you don't have to have it. And when you're doing a placement audit, the old negative keywords of the display network, I realized after I put this on here, like, wow, this is going to be really hard to see in a webinar and how to copy paste this little formula. But obviously, when you pull your placement report, you get a bazillion URLs that don't mean anything. This really simple little formula here, and I'll find a way to share this afterwards for those of you who want it. But this really simple formula will basically extract the title of every single placement that you serve on. So that way you don't have to click into every single solitary website to figure out what it is. At least it gets you a little bit further. The other things that I'll want to look for when I'm doing a placement report is, this seems a little counterintuitive, but I'm always skeptical of anything with an abnormally high click-through rate. So if you see something that has like a 10, 20, 30% click-through rate, that's not normal. That's probably spam. So you might want to get your ad out there to save a little bit of money. And then obviously look for high CPC or foreign language sites that don't have everything to do with your brand. Park domains, you can go back and forth on, but it's something to have a strategy on and figure out what you want to do with. And then, of course, just anything that looks weird. Anything that looks weird is something that better on the side of safe rather than sorry. And last but not least is apps. So I'm sure that all of us are scared of, having people's fat fingers, or they're giving their phone to their kid and the kid's playing a bunch of games and they're getting served the ads. In my opinion, and I think most of us here at Tenuity will agree, is that you should treat apps the same way that you would treat a placement. Don't look at them as bad as a category, because that's where the vast majority of people's time is spent on phones. Look at them the same way that you would look at your placements. There are categories of apps that you don't want to be on. There are apps that you do want to be on. I think the stat is something like 95% of Americans' time on their phones is on an app. So if you get rid of them all, again, you're getting rid of most of the market. But if you find a way to optimize them, you'll be in a place where you're in a really good position to win. Our good friend Kirk, PPC Kirk, wrote a nice post on how to include them en masse if you do want to do it, but I would exercise caution if you choose to do so. And it ran a little longer than I wanted, so I don't think we're going to go too much into real life examples. So we have a lot of great questions coming in, so we want to save some time for panel. So I will stop sharing my slides and we can start chatting.
Okay. Are we ready to chat? A lot of very good information there, by the way. And I think it raised a lot of questions that a lot of people had. I think I will start with this one question I have regarding responsive ads. Recently, I started noticing this new feature that Google has. Not me personally, I mean the person asking the question. They're now offering video instead of responsive ads. I mean, have you tried that? And also, where does the video show?
Yeah, I can take this one. So responsive display ads do allow video now. You just link directly from your YouTube channel. So it's the same way that you would run a YouTube ad. You can just put the asset inside the RDA template. They show exactly where the image would show. So wherever that landscape chunk is of your ad where your static image would be, the video does play right there. From what I've run with these, performance was not necessarily better. Wasn't really necessarily worse either. I think it's kind of like what Aaron was talking about. What are you looking to get out of that? I think it can be more informative for someone who is taking views into consideration and hoping to move this user down the funnel. I think if you are looking for last click delivery on this ad, maybe people don't have quite the patience that they would for static, where they see it as a little bit spammy if they're scrolling through a browser and something starts automatically playing to them.
Yeah. Okay. Any best practices for these video ads?
I would definitely launch them. Yeah, so keep them pretty short. You don't want like a 30-second because you won't see the whole thing, obviously. So ideally, they would look more like a bumper ad between like 6 and 15 seconds, I would say they could go up to, but you probably won't reach the end of a 15-second video. And I would run them alongside static just because that's kind of tried and true. In case your users don't respond well to live stream on their browser, I would just make sure that you have some static images in there as well.
Okay, great. That's very insightful. I mean, thank you. Now, here's another very good question regarding smart campaigns. I mean, smart campaigns came out recently. From what I've seen, by the way, is they just target a lot of stuff really quickly. I mean, are they really, really that smart, or is it still good to handle things manually? What are your thoughts?
I'm sure that you guys have run a few more smart campaigns than I have at Tenuity. I think you guys have a little bit bigger budgets than what I tend to work with. But we did run some campaigns with smart display campaigns when they first came out. And it was one of those things where we went into it knowing that it was going to be very much a learning process and that we were going to have to give it some time to figure out what we wanted to do and what it needed to where it needed to serve things to actually get the right results that we wanted. Honestly, we ran it for, I want to say maybe 3 months or something. By the end of it, we were hitting pretty much exactly at the target CPA that we wanted. Mm-hmm. And the quality of, it was a lead gen campaign that we had. The quality of leads that were coming from it were not really any different than the leads that we were getting other places. So I think the biggest thing around smart campaigns is that I would say it's the same thing that Aaron was saying about one of the other campaign types, is that it can be part of a strategy, but I certainly wouldn't make it the entirety of it. Use it, let Google learn a bit, but make sure that you set it up for success. If you're like, our target CPA was $100. So to make it in the realm that made sense based on the suggestions from Google, which actually ended up working, our daily budget had to be about 10 times that. So our daily budget was $1,000 a day. If you don't have 10 times your target CPA goal as like an available daily budget for a month or 2 or 3, probably don't do it, would be my suggestion. I don't know if you guys had any other experience than that.
The only, I guess, cherry on top that I'll put on that is, first of all, I agree with everything that you said. Budget size aside, the best practices are the same. The only other thing that I'll add is a lot of folks and a lot of our clients were really excited where it's like, ooh, Google will do the bidding for us. Let's just set the CPA really low and see what it'll do. I'll tell you what it'll do. It will turn itself off.
Yeah, well.
So
well, it'll also turn itself off if like that $100 CPA, that works because you have a sales funnel that can convert. You know, just because you want to, even if the CPA is like a high one, I mean, if it's not going to work, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's got to be realistic. We're not going to put in a $10 CPA for something that any other channel we're willing to pay $100 for, because it's going to be like you said. It's going to say it's going to test some stuff. It's not going to get performance, and then it's going to qualify itself out. So, I mean, there is that positive side that if it's not getting the results at once, it kind of slowly shuts itself down. So that's
so you just like set it and forget it, like no maintenance done. Are you looking at placements? Are you excluding?
I think the idea behind it is continually bringing down that TCPA. So you have to set it realistic to start, and maybe even 20% above like your average CPA for other campaigns or your non-branded search campaigns, anything that can be comparable to what you're running. And then the idea behind it is like, oh, it'll learn to bring it down. So maybe you set it 20% above and you're at 120. You really want it to be 90. You let it learn for 2 weeks, and then every 2 weeks you bring it down 15%. So the idea of it being smart is that it doesn't forget, and that it will continue to work in your favor, but it is a process, of kind of a manual process.
So when you do it manually, though, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like the description of a smart campaign is that it just doesn't forget. It's not necessarily
unless you pause it.
Forget things, right? Yeah, and then it forgets.
So let's talk about dumb campaigns for a second. Let's say you launch a dumb campaign. You're using, combinations of audiences, topics, all the different features they give you. What sort of, how often do you touch it once you launch it? And what sort of maintenance do you do? What sort of things do you adjust?
Within smart campaigns?
No, regular.
Oh, regular.
Yeah, dumb campaigns. Dumb campaigns, because
dumb campaigns. you touch a little more often. I would say if they are on automated bidding like a TCPA, you are still waiting at least a week before you're bringing your TCPA goal up or down based on volume. Bring it up if you want more, down if you want less, but ultimately trying to hit that goal that you've set for yourself for that campaign. Aaron touched on the manual placement exclusions. I think that the system is only so smart in excluding entire categories of content. So you do have to comb through those and make sure that you're not serving on like sweepstakes pages or anything that looks spammy and maybe has a few too many leads under its belt. And then I think ads are the biggest thing. I think people think since everything is automated now and you can throw a bunch of assets into one place that they don't need as much optimization, but they do kind of need constant care, removing what's not working, adding in more of what is working, and ultimately just constantly trying to increase your click-through rate.
Right, because I mean, let's not forget, like the one thing that they can never automate are the ads. And the creative message is only going to come from a creative person.
Right, totally.
Yeah. In terms of like the frequency and kind of changing things, I would absolutely agree that any of the like the algorithmic learning, smart bidding, that kind of stuff, give it time, because if you start moving that around real quick, it's never gonna learn anything. You're not teaching it what to do. You're changing everything and it's constantly trying to adjust. The only other thing I would say is I usually treat it like basically just like a brand new launch anywhere else. The first few days, first couple or 3 days, I'll log in and just make sure that everything looks normal and okay. Because sometimes you can launch something and one of those placements that's just total garbage will take up like all of your budget. And you got to go in and just make sure that you're culling those out relatively quickly. So once you've got the kind of baseline things out of the way, if you weren't able to proactively add in negative placements, that kind of stuff from other campaigns, I think the first couple days are just making sure that everything looks smooth and nothing looks ridiculous. And then after that, giving it time to learn and gathering more data to make decisions on.
By ridiculous, someone asked a question here. Jillian Murphy was asking regarding GSP campaigns. She's asking about how Google manages Gmail ads with Gmail versus ads in the GDN network.
So I think the question is asking if you have a smart campaign and you're plopping in, are they in the same-ish auction? I'm guessing.
There's that, but there's also, let's say, even if it's not smart. And sometimes like what I think a lot of people see is that they're running they launch their campaigns, and it ends up getting dominated by really, 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 really clickbaity placements, and maybe the ads are appearing on Gmail a lot, and that's just kind of dominating everything, and you're not getting any of the really, really good placements. So what are you doing? Do you like segment them out? Do you have like one group maybe, or one campaign that's targeting mail.google.com as a placement, while another one that's targeting the apps in order to, let's say, get the good stuff running? Like personally, like responsive ads, they're great. I'll tell you what, you're very correct about how they work really, really well. But sometimes there's certain banner sizes that only work best if you have a very creative person design the ad. Like let's say the 300 by 600 size. It never looks good in responsive, right? So it's like, so sometimes when I'm like, you know what, I want to win at 300 by 600, I'm going to like use that giant real estate because it's a huge ad and take advantage of that big canvas, right? But when I do that, I always put it in a different group or campaign. So what I'm asking is about like, what sort of things do you segment when you launch, you know?
Yeah, I think if you want to run within Gmail, the mail.google.com placement, it's best to negate that in your Google display campaigns and then run a GSP campaign, because that way you have more control over your Gmail ad. You're curating it to be a Gmail ad, and so you know what assets are in which spot. Whereas if you are targeting that placement in a regular display campaign, it's going to take all of those assets and serve it, and it might not be exactly how you wanted it to look or how it could look in its best format. So I would say if you have the budget to do both, and definitely separate them to where mail.google.com is exclusively a GSP campaign.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you remember the ad that I put, which I mean it's gone now, so you can't see it anymore. But at least personally, my personal Gmail has been getting polluted with retargeting ads. If there's a place that dynamic retargeting makes no sense, it's in Gmail, because the subject line is like okay, it's Nike shoes size 9W black whatever is the subject line. I'm like, that doesn't help. The ad unit itself looks pretty good, but considering it's feed based and is pulling from a product feed relative to other email subject lines, it feels a little weird.
Okay. How do you do
Doesn't
bidding,
wind
by
up
the way, in manual campaigns? Like, how often do you adjust bids?
Go
Depends
teams.
on how much volume you're going to get through it. Like it's always the wonderful answer, right? The more data you have coming through, the more frequently you can adjust it. I think I personally, if I can help it, I don't love adjusting bids for certain things more than once a week if I can avoid it, usually on lower volume stuff, because then you've got an entire week, so day of the week doesn't matter. You can at least see a week long worth of data that has come through and try and get rid of any type of fluctuations and that kind of stuff. Because even though day over day performance might not be the same all the time, usually week over week stuff balances out unless something got a little bit wonky. So that's usually like my max if I'm going to do it manually.
But don't you ever run into the situation where, let's say, you're bidding on a bunch of topics or audiences, let's say in a particular group, and just one of them takes all of your budget? So
Segment it out.
segment it out into another group?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
not bid
Into
lower on it?
another. It depends on how it's performing. If it's performing well, I don't want to bid lower on it and lose out on that stuff. If anything, I would rather say, well, why is this performing different than everything else? I'll try and dig into the performance, and then if everything looks kosher, then I will break it out into its own campaign or ad group, and then now I have that full slate of levers that you can pull on to optimize your campaigns anyway, to optimize just that one thing. So I would rather pull it out and be able to optimize a little bit more on it.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, I have a question from Arnaud Fisher. They're asking, for small budget unknown product, would you target a display awareness campaign to saturate it locally, or would you want to go nationwide?
I will say, if you have a small budget, don't. I would always say swing where you're most likely to hit the ball. So start small. If your budget is finite, don't try to serve ads to one person in every state or one person in every country in the EU. Go with where it is most likely to work and then scale up, rather than trying to start big where your budget will be exhausted before you can figure out what works. Start small and figure out what media works the best for you, what placements, what time, whatever. Once you find those nuggets, then you can start scaling up slowly. If you try to go nationwide with a small budget, you'll get frustrated and turn it off.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, but scaling, like, remember DCO? Have you been doing this long enough? When you would have DCO campaigns whitelisted? Okay, well, now it's that little feature which turned into a sliding bar, like target stuff you're not targeting, go outside of your targeting group, and how aggressive do you want to be. But I mean, like, is that a way to scale? I mean, back in the day, we'd be like, okay, you know what, we've got a lot of data, things are converting well, let's set up some DCO campaigns, right? I mean, isn't a way to scale up to kind of like slide that bar over once something's performing well in a group to go outside of your targeting?
Yeah, I think theoretically it's supposed to be the smart thing to do. Those people will look like your converters. I think it's often sold for scale. So I think people talk about it like, oh, you need volume, you should just bump this up a little bit. You can't really do it anywhere except your audience campaigns, and you don't really want to do it in your remarketing campaigns, because that gives it permission to go target people who have never been to your site before, and then your KPIs are going to look different than remarketing.
That kind of
So I think
audiences.
Yeah, it is a lot like similar audiences within another tactic. So you could have an in-market campaign, tell it to go get more people that look like your converters, and they're similar to people that are converting in the in-market campaign. So it's kind of an extra layer of reach. But like you said, yeah, it's a lot like similar audiences.
Yeah,
I mean, it does.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Go. Nope. Oh, okay. I mean, look, it does what it says it's going to do. It gets you more scale, but even though people don't often think of it this way, just like search, good volume is finite. There's not unlimited resources to go get. Okay, I have 50 people that are my best customers. Go find me 50 million more of them. That's not going to happen. There's just not that many of them out there. So there will be diminishing returns the more you slide the wheel over. I mean, sure, you might find other good pockets, but odds are they're never going to be as good as your best. So I think in tools like that, and the similar tools that Facebook has available, where it's like, I can stretch out my lookalikes to a really huge amount and they're all going to be good. They're not. So if you temper expectations, it certainly works and it does what it's supposed to do. But to Sarah and Michelle's point, KPIs are going to look weird.
Mm-hmm.
I have a good
Yeah.
question. I have Alyssa O'Mara. How quickly would you give up on a keyword that has a good number of impressions, decent CTR, but no conversions? By the way, I just noticed that she said keyword. I'm wondering if she meant placement or something display related. But let's assume the question is, let's say it's a placement. How quickly would you give
tomato
up?
Potato, they're the same.
Are they?
Yeah, close enough.
She could have meant
Sure.
contextual keyword on GDN, which
I was
is
going to say, they have
keyword.
they have
Yeah.
keywords still. Yeah.
Yeah, there are keywords.
Yeah.
Right. There are keywords. Okay, but let's say you're targeting on the GDN. Well, no, but maybe you meant search. But let's say you're targeting on the GDN, display advertising, whether it be a placement, topic, an audience, whatever. How quickly would you give up on it if you have decent CTR but no sales?
Usually, for me, ends up being a factor of our target CPA, basically. I let things run sometimes up to 3 to 5 times the CPA if I feel like we've made good adjustments and good optimizations and we should be narrowing things down. But it ends up being that if it's getting upwards of 3 and 5 times the target CPA that we have and it's not doing any better, it likely won't. Or there is something else preventing you from having that succeed that you're not getting the data on. Otherwise, you would have optimized it at that point. So,
yeah, but what if you're seeing a placement? Let's say you're looking at placements, right? And you're seeing a placement with like a 20% CTR.
That already is a red flag for me because
that's spam.
That's just doo-doo. That's not okay. Yeah,
it's either spam or the people who like structure their ads to look like not ads.
Like there's like a slideshow and the ads right under it.
Yeah. I mean, the only time that I would keep, like maybe a placement specifically, the only time I would keep something on that hasn't been converting is if it is like so much your target audience or the people that go to that website that you can't help but think that it's providing value, even if it's not driving conversion. So, I mean, placement specifically, that's where I would keep it on. But I would also say, like, if you're talking about a specific keyword, I would be curious if you have other things that are driving conversions or if it's just one specific thing, because it could also be that the conversion you're asking for is just not a good fit for the GDN. So it could also be that you need to rethink what your actual call to action is. And maybe you need something a little bit more valuable to your target customer.
Okay, I'm going to do one more question. And I'm sorry if I'm talking over you guys just because I want to get these questions in. Actually, I have 2 questions. There's some, really quickly. First of all, something local. New Leads is asking. They're offering a new service to a restaurant to get more customers through their door. Is the GDN a possible fit? I mean, I know it's local. It could be easy to get a lot of like eyes on your message. There are some like foodie relating targeting. I mean, is a GDN somewhere you might recommend for them?
I'm trying to read into the question. I think this person is asking if they can sell their service to restaurateurs.
Yeah.
If that's the question, the GDN would be
You're
tough, just because there's not that many of them. Like there's like 2 managers per restaurant.
I misunderstood. He's selling to restaurants, so it's very niche.
Yeah. I mean, if you're trying to get more customers to the restaurant door, absolutely, it's amazing. Like,
yeah,
go
that's
on the
what I was
foodie
thinking.
sites.
It was just me and my in the fog of trying to finish this in the next 30 seconds. Which actually kind of slides into one question about being niche. I have Hydrochem Systems asking, where do you feel display ads fit or not fit in a very niche industry? Yes.
I'll give a quick answer just because I've tried to sell oil refining products on the GDN, of which there's like your target audience is like 9. There's like 9 people that you're going after. I would never really advocate this for any other place except for hyper niche, but this is a great area where you go into whatever the iteration of the Google Display Planner is now, that weird little campaign wizard. You find hyper niche sites that your people go on and add them as placements and target those. Every other, I think, advertising medium, I would say target people. This is a case where if you're hyper niche, and I forget the name, but I'm assuming it was like petrochemical something, so I'm assuming it's oil. For something like that, there will be periodicals or sites or forums or message boards that only your audience reads. Go there and take it over.
Yeah, that's true.
You can do the dumpster diving version of it too. You can go to the Google search results and click on a bunch of them and then see if they serve ads, because depending on the status of Google's display planner, it may or may not exist at that point. So you can go the other way and find the sites that you know are a good fit, and then see if they've got GDN ads.
One more thing, though, they're going to definitely want to find a very good micro conversion, because chances are they're selling an expensive product. The sales, so they got to find something they can measure on their landing page that indicates good users, right? So that way they have something to optimize towards.
Yep.
I would definitely encourage an even more micro version of a micro conversion. So if you're a lead gen, you might say like sign up for a free demo or like get a sales consultation.
Right.
Go even lighter than that. Go with
Oh yeah.
sign up for our email list or something like that.
Or even if or someone who's engaged in, let's say, a video on their landing page, or or even pages for visit. If it's a very niche, people aren't reading about hydrochemicals for fun, I think.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like you're selling
might.
Ferraris. No,
I do.
okay, yeah, they might, but that I hate they might, because when you do online marketing, you don't make decisions based on the ones that might. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, people in this third world place might convert, but you know what? It's like the majority of them won't. We're not going to waste our budget there. No offense. But,
Yeah.
yes.
No, it's okay. I
Yeah, I
did
know.
see. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was
Go
just going to say, sometimes when you do online marketing, you can sound a little bit racist because you generalize people by who they are and where they're from.
Yeah, you kind of exclude the poorer demographics. It feels weird every time.
I know, talking about it, but you know what the truth is that we're not excluding them; they're excluding us. It's not because we don't want them; it's because they don't want or can't buy us. That's really it, right?
Yep.
If you exclude women or men from a campaign, you're not sexist or chauvinist. It's just you're excluding them because they don't want to buy you. They're choosing not to take you. That's why it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Weird world.
Yes. Okay, we're running a little over. We can continue this on Twitter, by the way. SCMrush Live is the handle. And I'm very happy that everyone joined. Thank you, Aaron, Michelle, Sarah. It's great having you. It's been pretty useful. By the way, I really love that formula they gave to find the titles of the pages. I'm going to use that.
It's a fun trick. We came up with the idea in a team meeting, and I was like, there's got to be a way to do this. It's literally the first result. If you say extract title tags into Google Sheets, it just shows up.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, Google Sheets is amazing stuff these days. Okay, so again, it's been a pleasure. So any one last trick or tidbit you want to give anybody before we sign off?
I will give one answer to a question that I saw, but we didn't get a chance to because it's hyper niche. Someone asked about CDB or hemp products. There are networks for that. Google is not one of them. Generally speaking, anything controversial, Google just says, nope, not going to mess with it. But there's a couple networks out there. So if you just do a little bit of Googling, they're pretty lightly used. They're worth it. I would say my one tip, in spite of what we just said about Mr. Hydrochemical, is when you're doing display, think about people. Don't think about sites. Don't think about websites. Think about people and what you're trying to tell them, what you're trying to get them to do. And that will make things make a lot more sense.
Right. And actually, he just said that he's in the big rig truck washing industry. So I feel that it's pretty easy to reach content. No, really, there's got to be websites that's just specific to this niche that he could saturate. You know what I mean? Because, yeah.
Could be.
Yeah, there definitely are.
Okay. I'm going to look it up later because I have a truck that needs to get washed. Anything else, Michelle, Sarah, that you want to say before signing off?
I feel like we covered it all.
Yeah.
So everybody listen to Aaron.
Yes, very good use of the time. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate y'all joining us. I guess we're signing off for the day or evening, wherever you're at.
Thank you, everyone.